All right, as I mentioned earlier, we talked about for the terms this summation with the sigma sign. Now, the previous video where we were given a series and you were asked to find each term of the series, well, we're going to take this a step further. Well, for our summation, yes, you're going to find each term of the series, but you're going to take each term of those series and add them together. That's where the summation comes from. We have the lower limit and then we have the upper limit. So when we read this, we start off with saying the sum of, and then we talk about what's our summation element. So here we would say the sum of x sub I as I goes from 1 to, for here, n. Okay, so we're going to find first each term, and then we're going to add those terms together. So as we look at our example here, this is how we would read. I'm going to write it out, but this is how we would read this particular question where it says to evaluate the series. So we would read this as the sum of 3i plus 4 as I goes from 1 to 4. So your lower limit is 1, your upper limit is 4. So if we were talking about in sequence, as a sequence, we're looking at 4 terms. Okay, so what we're going to do is start off with, because what we're saying here, we're going to substitute one in for I, 2 in for I, 3 in for I, and 4 in for I. We're going to find the value of each of those and then we add them together. So instead of writing it out separately, we're going to write it all together. So this is how we would write it. We have here, starting with the lower limit, 3 times 1 plus 4 plus, then you have here 3 times 2 plus 4 plus 3 times 3 plus 4 plus 3 times 4 plus 4. And then let's work each parenthesis. So we have 3 plus 4 in the first parenthesis. Second one, we have 6 plus 4, then 9 plus 4, and then 12 plus 4. Adding each of those terms, we have 7 plus 10 plus 13 plus 16, which gives us 46. So we're going to, here again, you're given a lower limit and then you have an upper limit. So our lower limit was 7, our upper limit was 16, but in between those, we find those terms and then add them together. Let's look at the next example. Evaluate the series. The sum of -1, the quantity of -1 raised to the j power times j as j goes from 1 to 4. Okay, so this time instead of using I as the variable, is using j. So let's write out each term for this series here. So you're saying the quantity of -1 raised to the first power times 1, because we're looking at when j is 1, j is equal to 2, j is equal to 3, and j is equal to 4. Plus, we have the quantity of -1 squared times 2 plus the quantity of negative 1 cubed times 3 plus the quantity of negative 1 to the fourth times 4. And let's simplify each of these. So we have negative 1 times 1, because the quantity of negative 1 to the first power is negative 1, plus the next one we have 1 times 2, plus we have negative 1 times 3, plus then we have 1 times 4. Then that would give us negative 1 plus 2 plus negative 3 plus 4, and adding those together we have 2. Okay. All right, last example. So we have here, it says, write the terms for the series, evaluate the sum, given x of 1 is equal to negative 1, x of 2 is equal to 0, x of 4 is equal to 1, x of 3 is equal to 1, x of 4 is equal to 2, x of 5 is equal to 3. Okay, so you're given 5 terms here, but look at our question. It says we want to find the sum of 3 times x of I minus x sub I squared, as I is equal to, or I goes from 1 to 3. So if I is going from 1 to 3, do we need these last 2 terms here? No, we don't. Now, for this example, they're giving us what is the first term, the second term, and the third term. They're giving us the value. So the value of the first term is negative 1. So what we're going to do, wherever we see x with that subscript, we're going to substitute negative 1 in there. So our first term is written as 3 times negative 1 minus, then you're saying the quantity of negative 1 squared, that's the first term, plus the second term, because that's the summation component. It says our second term is equal to 0. So wherever we see our x element here with the subscript of I, we're going to plug in 0. So we have 3 times 0 minus 0 squared. Then our last term, we're substituting 1 in for our third term, x of 3. So we have here 3 times 1 minus 1 squared. Okay, so let's look at each parenthesis. We have here 3 times negative 1, that's negative 3, minus the quantity of negative 1 squared here, that gives us positive 1, so we would just say 1, plus the middle term, 3 times 0 is 0 minus 0 squared, that's 0, plus 3 times 1 is 3 minus 1 squared, that is 1. And then we have negative 4 plus 0 plus 2. And adding those terms together, we have a value of negative 2.